I love video game sound design. Sound is the backbone of games, even if you don't notice it. The subtlety of sound design is something that makes it so damn underappreciated. Obviously, developers should always prioritize aspects of a game, like the gameplay, the story, or graphics, but when sound in any game lacks depth, it sort of ruins the experience for me. Video game sound design doesn't even have to be that complex for it to be good. Take sounds in idle games, for example. Imagine if these games didn't have any sound. It would ruin the experience, right? A large part of sound design for me is about conveying emotions, and I'm sure many others would agree with me. For instance, let's say you're designing sounds for a shotgun. You'd probably want it to sound as satisfying as possible. Every click, every function, every shell being loaded, and finally the crack of the gun firing. The same process would go for every sound. And since sound is one of the two senses that can be utilized in games, why not shoot for the sky with your sounds and make it the best it can be? So that is exactly what sound designers do. Foley is the process of creating sounds through a plethora of objects and props. Foley artists are given certain environment descriptions or scenes and are asked to create sounds based on an environment. A perfect example of this would be the use of ambience. Games use ambience to give games a sort of world building. Games like Stalker use distant screams of mutants and rumbling anomalies. Red Dead Redemption 2 uses the sound of nature, the booming of civilization, and industrialization. And Minecraft uses unsettling cave noises that make you wonder what could be down in the unknown depths. My point is, ambience is used to blend in with the background of games and set moods. And this sets a sort of aesthetic each game is trying to go for. Each game has their own takes on ambience, and it's not just in sound effect form. It can also take form in music too. You can travel in Minecraft, for instance, and the ambient music will slowly swell into the background and leave you alone with your thoughts, leaving you wonder what and where to build next. We can't talk about video game sound design without mentioning horror games. Horror sound design derives from building tension and fear within the player, and overall is probably the most common form of sound design, and has been used for decades. And horror sound design is all about administering a spooky environment, regardless of what the visuals are, or what is going on in the game, and you are meant to feel the existential dread. And all of this perfectly aligns with the game Iron Lung. In Iron Lung, you are placed on a moon with an ocean of blood, sealed within the sea vessel nicknamed the Iron Lung, hence the name. As you are submerged into the ocean, your only form of a window is sealed shut, leaving you with no clear visual cues to go off of, other than numbers on a digital screen, making auditory cues your main source of understanding what is going on, and how to navigate. This makes Iron Lung a horror game that stands out from the bunch, because it is essentially blind horror. You have no idea what could be outside the confines of the vessel, and that thought alone would make anybody afraid. Along with this, Iron Lung's exploration system is very unique, giving you a mounted camera to take photos of the vessel's surroundings. But the camera is very old, low quality, and it takes a couple seconds to process, adding to the suspense of what could be out there. Personally, I love Iron Lung's approach to making audio the forefront of the game, because it forces you to focus on the atmosphere so much more than any typical horror game. You can hear the sub pushing against the forces of the water, and you can hear creaks in the pipes within the sub. But eventually, while taking photos of points of interest throughout your expedition, you eventually end up hearing something else a little more sinister. It doesn't matter what made that awful sound. All you know now is that you aren't alone, and whatever made that sound sounded big and angry. You quickly take a picture to see if you can see anything, and what you see can only be described as some sort of creature. You quickly take another photo, only to find out that whatever that thing is, has disappeared. You can only help to think that whatever this creature is following you. As you continue to take photos to the vast moon's ocean trench, you finally end up at the last point of interest, and when you try to snap a photo, this happens. And that's it. You get booted straight back to the main menu. I appreciate Iron Lung for its simple yet intricate sound design, but there's another game that takes sound to the next level that we must talk about. This is DayZ. DayZ is one of, if not my most favorite game of all time. And let me tell you, DayZ is quiet. Too quiet. Let me explain. DayZ as a game is a very slow experience. You wake up along a beach in an apocalyptic wasteland. You are told nothing, and there is no other goal than to survive as long as possible. And with how big and desolate the maps are in DayZ, it's very common that you can go literal hours without seeing, or rather hearing, a soul. The reason I say this is DayZ, for the most part, is a very sound-based game. This sound design choice creates this atmosphere where you never really know if you're being watched throughout your journey. For all you know, you could be stalked from afar, and somebody could be waiting for their time to strike. There are many moments in DayZ where I get this sort of primal feeling, something that feels off. I'll be sitting in a house, rearranging my things, and in the moment, for a split second, it sounds like somebody is walking around outside, with some other random noise that sounds like it's coming from a person. But when time came to look at the door, it's nothing but my mind playing tricks on me. Let me paraphrase that. The sound of silence is so overbearing to the point where it makes my mind create something up due to the lack thereof. Or sometimes I'll be running around in the forest when the wind kicks in, and it can sound like there are footsteps behind you approaching, but really, it's just the ambient noises. You know how crazy that is? It goes to show that mediums like sound design makes a game's experience so much more. And whenever there is sound to fill the silence, that's when things get crazy. Remember when we were talking about horror and its tribute to tension and fear? Yeah, this is basically that, but 100 times more suspenseful. Playthroughs can last a long time, but there are times where you can hear players from afar, usually from the source of gunshots. And no matter how loud or quiet or how distant the gunshots are, it always warrants a scare. And the craziest part is that tension never really goes away. Even while in a gunfight, you're always within a constant state of fear and paranoia, and every little noise makes you jump. Are those footsteps coming up those stairs, or is that just your imagination? All of this shows that silence is a very powerful tool when it comes to horror sound design, and when it is utilized correctly. Speaking of horror sound design, one of my new favorite features in modern video games today is proximity voice chat. There's something so pivotal about talking to a friend in a spatial environment. Lethal Company uses this hallmark to its fullest. I've had many moments in Lethal Company where one moment I'll be goofing around with a friend, laughing, making jokes, and the next, they're gone. We get lost wandering in the winding hallways of the facility. You have no idea whether your friends are dead or in the same exact situation as you are. I'll be yelling for a friend, hoping for a response, but to no avail. Proximity voice chat has a balance between being hilarious and downright terrifying, and that's what makes it so damn great. Sound design takes a ton of work. Don't let it subtly fool you. From ambience to atmosphere to music to something as simple as a footstep, sounds had to be recorded, tweaked in post, and finally coded into the game, where it had to be playing at certain inputs, intervals, and actions. And to anybody out there watching this, I hope this broadens your view on sound in games, and how developers can use sound to their advantage, not just as a way to fill the silence, but to use it as the way they see fit.